Trigger warning. We discuss domestic violence in this podcast episode. Do you ever wish you could teleport back to an older version of yourself and save them from making a horrible, time-wasting mistake? It does sound tempting, but what's the fun in that? And the truth is, no time spent learning a lesson is time wasted. That said, they say a smart person learns from their mistakes, but a truly wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So here we are, sharing our hard-earned wisdom with you. If you're in your 20s or beyond and asking yourself questions like, why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners? I tell myself I'm just having fun, but why do I feel so bad about myself after? Why am I always the one chasing, initiating, and making excuses for their behavior? We have the answers, along with tried and true tips for breaking these patterns and bringing flow, trust, and power into your dating experience and relationships. Let's get into it. Welcome to Rich in Spirit,
Paid in Full.
I'm Victoria.
And I'm Eimanne.
Here, we believe you don't have to choose between spiritual growth and financial success,
Ambition and alignment.
or healing and building an abundant life.
Join us each week to quantum leap with both proven, profitable systems and the spiritual insights that will light your way through life's greatest expansions.
Let's step into success that feeds your soul. I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited for this episode. And it's your birthday.
Yes,
Maybe not out, but the day we're recording, July 17th, it's Iman's birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So we've got an interesting episode in honor of a birthday. Before we get into the episode and into all of the advice that we want to share and the experience and wisdom that we're going to pass down, Victoria, would you mind leading us in some grounding breaths?
I would love to. Okay. So wherever you're at right now, take a deep inhale into your nose, holding at the top, taking your time to get there. And then sighing it out, moving your body on the exhale. We're going to get right into the movement today. Maybe some hip circles, shaking the hands. And we're going to do two more of those. So taking another deep, slow inhale, feeling your stomach and chest expand like a wave. And then holding at the top. And then sighing it out, letting it all go. You can stay in stillness or you can keep moving, whatever feels right for you. And then one more time, taking a deep inhale into the nose, deepest inhale of the day. Slowly getting to the top and then holding it. Feeling yourself full of oxygen. And then letting it go. Sighing it out, feeling your jaw relax, feeling your shoulders come down from your ears, shoulder blades dropping down your back. And I feel called to say this. If you guys are relaxing somewhere for this episode, keeping your palms up is a great way to receive and just acknowledge that you are open to this information, set the intention. We should do that. Let's set an intention.
Okay, I'm always down.
So we're going to set the intention that Eimanne and I share what our listeners need to hear to align with their highest purpose, with their highest timeline, and with their highest good, and that anyone listening takes what they like and can leave the rest. Anything else you...
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. There was a delay.
No, I think there's a little delay.
It's definitely Mercury retrograde.
Mercury retrograde is in the podcast. It is in the room, and we're going to love it and accept it, and it's fine.
Please take it away, Victoria. It was your great idea to share, and I feel like it's very appropriate because Well, for me, it's my birthday, and with another year of getting older comes hopefully another year of wisdom.
Basically, Eimanne and I are going to be reflecting on our experience, in particular relationships. We're going to go off on a few other topics that are very much related and connected to dating and relationships, but that is going to be the theme as we are both in our 30s and we have some wisdom.
We hope.
Yes, we hope we have some wisdom that something will resonate. And this topic has been coming up a lot for me for whatever reason. Do you ever have those moments where you're having this conversation with yourself driving in the car and you're like, this would be a really good Instagram story or podcast or something? So that's what this is. I was having this conversation in my head driving the other day. Like, I would tell my younger self this. But with that being said, Eimanne, since it is your birthday, what is feeling top of mind for you as you begin a new year that you're going to be implementing or doing differently? It doesn't have to be in your 20s, but differently than what you've done in the past. Anything that's popping up for you?
Yeah, so what's been popping up for me recently that I'm working on and that I believe will be a theme of this next year is boundaries. And we just did an episode on this. We just talked about boundaries, and that was not accidental, but that's what I'm working on. So that's showing up in multiple ways. It's showing up in my relationship with my family, it's showing up in relationship with my business, and also with my friends. I'm not actively dating right now, so it's not showing up in a romantic relationship, but I know that throughout my 20s and throughout my past romantic relationships, there has been a clear lack of boundaries. And that is definitely still present now, but in a different way. So now it's not with a partner that I'm practicing boundaries, it's with my business. And that's an important lesson and an important thing to realize is that when you don't learn the lessons that are showing up for you, they will just continue to show up until you do learn them. They will take many forms. And even once you learn the lesson, it will continue to show up to test you and be like, did you really learn me? Or it will show up in new ways. It will show up in new levels because you're continually growing and spiraling up and putting into practice the things that you have learned throughout your life. So I can realize that some of the time I've spent in relationships did not have strong boundaries, and I'm still learning that lesson now.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's also a big theme for me, the boundaries that I'm realizing in relationship. I think outside of relationships, of course, it's a work in progress, but I do feel like I'm at a better place with it than I have been in the past. But in a romantic relationship, it's something I really struggle with to the point that I was thinking the other day, do I even know how to set boundaries? Like, what is that? Like, what is that in a romantic relationship? Because there's so many times where you bring something to your partner and you're talking about it, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I see your perspective, and maybe this was a little bit out of line, or now it makes more sense. And it's like, am I compromising my boundaries, or am I just getting more information and then making a different decision? And I think it can be everything. And it is such a gray area, but we'll get more into that today.
I think that's where discernment comes into play. So you're right, it is a gray area. Like, is this a boundary, or am I compromising myself? Am I abandoning myself? Or is this just new information? That comes down to discernment, is knowing when you are doing one instead of the other. And I think you can understand that better through practice and through experience and through growth. Unless you've had really good examples of healthy boundaries and strong boundaries, a lot of us are just learning it through experience. And that means you have to do the thing. Or you download a podcast that's like, hey, this is how to get healthy boundaries, like I did earlier this week. Because I was like, yeah, I did not have examples of healthy boundaries. So do I know what that looks like? And I have had some experience practicing it, but there's clearly still a gap. And so it's something else that I see a lot of my clients struggling with. So I've got to figure it out so they can figure it out, so we can figure it out together. And it's only going to serve us in the long run, which is something we covered in the last episode, was the ways that having healthy, strong boundaries will benefit you. But yeah, when you're in that romantic relationship, especially, and you're trying to be a equal partner and a fair person and empathetic, it can be really easy to get lost in the gray area and compromise yourself for someone else.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess now I'm going to start with sharing my experience in my late teens to 20s in relationship. And then from there, we can go into what I would do differently now, or what I would tell the young people listening to do differently if they're open to hearing it. And also, I just want to say I don't have any regrets. Everything is a learning experience. And whoever is listening, you should not either, because we don't know what we don't know. And like Eimanne was saying, a lot of us don't have good role models of healthy boundaries. So we do have to learn via experience. So it's not something where, oh, I'm just going to like lock myself in my house and not interact with anyone and then I'll be safe. No, you do have to put yourself out there, meet people, date, do the things to learn what you like, what you don't like, what is okay for you, what is not okay for you, etc. So to summarize, my 20s, honestly, up till my 30s, I was very boy crazy. I wanted to be liked. I wanted approval from the guys I liked. I wasted a lot of time putting things that brought me joy, things that I loved on the back burner to give more time, more presence, I guess, to my relationships that now looking back, it was very clear that they weren't going anywhere. And there were many signs, but I was forcing it. I wanted to make it work. And something that's really interesting that I've learned is, and we might have talked about this in another podcast, but when you are with emotionally unavailable people or trying to get these people to like you, putting all this work in, it's easy to go into victim mode in those situations and be like, well, I'm doing all of these things. Why doesn't he love me more? Why isn't this happening? But it's actually a mirror and a reflection of the parts of you that are avoidant, that are emotionally unavailable. Because if you were completely emotionally available and open, you would not settle for someone who is closing you off and not giving you the attention and not wanting to be with you, because that is really scary. That can be really scary to someone who feels like they're unworthy of love, they're undeserving of love, to be with someone that is like, I love you for all that you are, and I want to make this work, and I'm so excited. That's terrifying because the subconscious belief or what's going on in the part of you that's wounded is, oh my God, what if I fuck this up?
Like, I don't deserve this.
Yeah, I don't deserve this. And then what if I open up to it and allow it and then it doesn't work? How am I ever going to come back from that? So I obviously did not know this in my 20s. So I was like, poor me, I'm doing all these things and spending all this time. And oh, I'm not even in LA. I'm in Colorado with some guy and I'm just putting my acting career on hold for this person who doesn't even like me. I remember we were long distance and he was like, can we have more space? Like maybe not talk every day. And I'm like, and I was 27, guys. I wasn't like 17. We were in an adult relationship.
I think that's a line in a Taylor Swift song, isn't it? There's something she was like,
Yes.
when you told me you needed space, but we've been apart for 3 months or something.
Yes. Oh my God. No, that's We Are Never Getting Back Together. I think that's
Yeah,
the song.
yeah.
We'll link it below. No, I'm just kidding.
You guys can find that one on your own.
It was a lot of that and just almost a high of getting out of the relationship and calling up my friends and being like, can you believe that he did this? And I did this for him and he blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff. And this wasn't just in relationship, this was in flings. So it was a lot of self-abandoning, a lot of lack of boundaries. There were no boundaries. There was codependency happening. And there was this avoidance, a part of myself that I was keeping closed off and that felt safer in these relationships with men who could not fully commit to me.
So, what would the lesson be from that if you were going to then pass along a lesson for someone to learn out of that experience? What did you extract from it?
Yeah, I guess the big lesson for me from that whole experience and what I would love to pass on to the younger people. And I've been thinking about how to word this because I don't want it to come off like, don't date, don't look at men, keep your head down. We're hormonal, we're having fun. You want to date people. I'm not going to be like, save yourself till marriage or like something crazy, which that's not crazy. If that's your decision, that's great. But I'm just saying, I know it's not realistic for a lot of people. I would say focus on what brings you joy, as corny and cliche as it sounds. Focus on school, focus on your hobbies, focus on your friendships, travel, whatever lights you up, collecting postcards, like whatever your thing is, focus on that. And you're going to meet people who are actually interested in probably what you're interested in. And you are more interesting when you are doing what you are interested in. You are more open and magnetic when you are, and I don't mean masturbating when I say this, but I can mean that. But when you are pleasuring yourself, like when you are doing what brings you pleasure, that just makes you brighter and enticing. And I'm not saying do all these things to get a man. That is a byproduct of doing all that. And so my point is, don't worry about it. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. Do not focus like, I need to find a man by this age. I need to sacrifice X, Y, and Z to find this man. And if you do find a man that you love when you're like 23, don't think, oh, I need to date more. I need to see what else is out there. There's nothing out there. Okay. Like if you found
there.
like if like if you found a really nice, wonderful man who loves you, no one's perfect, but who is wanting to build a life with you and who's like, let's get married, and he's a genuine guy, marry him. You're not settling, you're not missing out on like a bunch of fucking trauma and partying and dating a bunch of guys. Like, it's okay. You don't need to do that. Trust me, you do not need to do that. That is like, just marry the nice guy.
I felt like I had that guy. He was nice and genuine and he loved me so much and absolutely wanted to settle down and have a family. I mean, we weren't like talking about marriage because we were quite young, but we'd been together like for almost 5 years and just so in love, so great, so this and that. But I guess I did hear that it wasn't, oh, I need to like see what else is out there, but I was like, I'm not ready to settle down. And it's weird because now looking back, right, I can see multiple threads. One was a self sabotage, like, I don't deserve the love. I don't think I'm worthy of this love. And so that piece was there. And then there was also the piece of, I don't want this to be the rest of my life. I don't want to be married and together and happy. Maybe there was a piece of me that like didn't want to be happy. And I thought that was that. But I also sort of felt as though settling down and being with him meant I had to give up my dream. Like I was going to be happy with this person and be happy to settle down and have kids. And that wasn't what I had always envisioned for myself. And so it was really triggering. And obviously, things happen for a reason. I'm happy where I am now. I mean, I don't know what he's doing these days, but he does cross my mind every once in a while. What if I had stayed? What if I had worked on myself, not in the escapism, I need to go do something bigger. I need to have more freedom and live this bigger life and not be trapped in a marriage. What if I had been like, oh, I'm happy with this person. I want to be with this person. But of course, now it's easy to look past all the details. He was a super big sports guy, and I'm just not into sports, you know? And so we were spending our Sundays in a sports bar when I was like, it's so beautiful outside. What are we doing here? Is that going to be the rest of my life going to baseball games? There's layers to it. There's so many layers when it comes to relationships and choosing to be with someone or choosing to leave. But I guess what you were saying is don't let that be the only reason, right? If you
Right.
find a good guy and you're just hearing that voice that's like, oh, but you should see what else is out there, that shouldn't be the reason that you're
Right.
not sticking with them.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just remember hearing so much when I was younger from well meaning people. You're so young. You have so much time. Do you really like this person? I always felt like I had so much time and so many things I needed to do, and almost like getting married was this prison sentence and having children was this prison sentence. And now that I have tons of friends who are married and have kids, I know that that is absolutely not true. I mean, it can be true, of course. It all depends on who you pick to be your partner. And I think that that can also be something we learn. That is something that can take many tries, and that's okay. We're all on our own journey. I don't have that person that I dated at any point in my life that if I look back, I'm like, oh, that would have made sense to marry them. or it was even a healthy relationship. Like, I don't have any of those until my current one. I will say, though, there were people who were very kind and cute and were interested in me, and I was just not there. And I didn't even give them the time of day. Like, maybe I went on a couple dates with them, and I don't regret it, but it's just interesting. It's interesting to look back and be like, huh, I went for the person that was the total opposite of this person who actually wanted to be with me and was very kind and cool. And I'm thinking of one person in particular. We went on one date and then I literally was like, oh, he likes me too much or something. I was 24, but still.
Same girl, same. I literally remember, actually, you know this person, but we went on like 2 or 3 dates, and he would bring me flowers, and he was so nice and so sweet and clearly liked me. And I was just like, no, I can't. It's too much. But it was shortly after I had broken up with that other guy who loved me so much. And so I think I was still in that pattern of like, I don't deserve this amount of love. And that's the other thing that I see quite common, is that the healthy, safe love, healthy attachment, and safe, calm energy does not feel like chemistry in our nervous system. Because what our nervous system feels as chemistry is actually activation. It's actually being triggered. And it's your old family patterns and toxic dynamics and not good stuff. But you're being activated, and it feels like love, and it feels exciting, and it feels like passion, but it's actually an unhealthy dynamic. And so, yeah, I went from this wonderful, kind, brought me flowers all the time guy to wanting the one who was so extremely avoidant and liked me enough. He liked me, but just dealing with his own demons, and his own depression, and really struggled to be present with me. But that's the other thing, right? I remember when we first got together, the one that I chose over the nice, attentive guy, I was like, he's so present. Wow, he's so present. And then very soon after the mask fell off, it was like, oh my God, this guy's not present at all. So those things that you think can be the thing attracting you to them sometimes ends up being the actual opposite. What do you think that's about?
Well, when we start dating someone, we are putting our best foot forward. And I think over time we get comfortable and our coping mechanisms and trauma responses and different things will inevitably come out. But I don't necessarily think that the person we're being in the beginning is a fake. Maybe it is for some people. If you have some like diagnosed personality disorder, maybe you are completely, or not diagnosed, completely putting on this show that is absolutely not you. But I do think that we're putting our best foot forward. So it's not a lie. It's just those are our best qualities. And that is our true self. But then over time, the things that we haven't looked at, the things that we haven't worked on are going to come forward to be healed. If we are open to that, and if we are on a quote unquote healing journey, which I want to do a separate podcast about that and what that means, because I've been thinking about that a lot lately, the word healing versus embodying something. But anyway, if we're open to it, relationships are a beautiful mirror, like we were saying earlier, an opportunity to have these things come up that are coming up because we're scared, to heal them, to look at them. But oftentimes that's not what happens. It becomes this projection. We're blaming the other person. We're getting scared. They're scared. It's just like two children in adult bodies in a relationship. What do you think about that?
The inner child can be playing out what it feels it didn't get when you were growing up. And so it can seek that out in your relationships, and it's looking for that in your partner. But if you or if both are not actively working on it, it's very easy to just let that inner child run the show and just drive the whole bus. And then you're not two adults in a communicative, healthy relationship. You're two little kids trying to meet a need that wasn't filled in childhood. And that can be really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I want to say, if you are listening to this and you have not started doing somatic practices, and I'll explain what that is to the best of my abilities in a moment, that is so important because talk therapy is incredible, especially for bringing awareness and understanding why certain things are happening, where they came from. But trauma lives in the body, and talking about it is not going to process it. And what can happen is now you just have a really good way to explain why you're doing what you're doing, but you're not actually changing it. Or to explain to someone else why they're doing what they're doing and like use all these big therapy words. So, in order to actually heal, let's just say this people pleasing wound that was passed down from your mom or modeled for you by your mom, you're just watching and you're like, okay, that's how we do it. That's how we're in relationships. And in order to heal that and to process it and release it so you can do something different in your relationship, and so you're not doing what Eimanne was saying of just calling in another version of your dad so that you can heal this wound with him subconsciously, you can then feel it. There's EMDR, there's internal family systems, there's breath work, there's tons of different modalities you can use. And somatic basically means of the body. So you are going into your body. And when we experience trauma, and trauma can be you are in a grocery store when you're 4 years old and you lose your mom. And in that moment, you think that you are abandoned and alone in this Kroger for the rest of your life. As an adult, we're looking at that and we're like, that's not, my mom wasn't going to leave me in the grocery store. But your 4-year-old brain is thinking that. So people hear trauma and they're like, oh, I was never molested or I was never beaten. No, your brain could be processing it in the same way as someone else's brain would who was being abused in a very significant way, meaning like you being at a grocery store in your 4-year-old brain can actually be just as traumatic as something that as an adult we look at as like, oh, that's a trauma. So it is very important that instead of going into this flight, fight, freeze, fawn, instead of going into one of those, which is basically your body, like, I need to protect myself, I'm going to run away, I'm going to fight back, I'm going to just be like, sure, I'll do whatever you want, or I'm just going to go completely blank. And so your body's doing one of those when the trauma is happening, then it's trapped in your body. So the cycle never finished processing. You never release this emotion. Like when you see a dog, like let's say you reprimand your dog. Don't go over there. Don't eat that shit on the ground, whatever it is. Your dog will oftentimes shake after. And wolves do this, a lot of animals do this, and it's releasing that tension of like, oh, that wasn't very nice to be yelled at, and it's letting it go. And somatic processing is what we have to do as a human because we didn't do it in the moment. And so that is a very, 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 very important part of having a healthy relationship is rewiring what you learned in childhood. All parents are doing the best that they can. No parent is perfect. But if you did not have the healthy boundaries, the healthy attachment style modeled for you.
So how might someone who's in a relationship practice those somatic techniques in the moment? Like when would be good opportunities for them? Maybe if there's an example from your past of, if I was going to do it again, maybe in that situation, I would have gone to this tool rather than the spiral or the fighting or whatever you did at that time.
Yeah, so in a relationship I was in, and this was actually in my late 20s to early 30s, this would happen like once a week, which is so messed up to think about now. But I also think it's pretty common or some variation of this. So we would get in an argument, and it was typically about him wanting me to actually be more open and share how I was feeling and just be more engaged, I guess, in the relationship because I was disassociating all the time. And I would sit on the couch and he would sit in the chair across from me and just like scream at me. And my mind would just go completely blank. Even if I wanted to respond, there was nothing in my head. I was in a freeze response. So my body was like, oh, survival mode. I'm protecting myself. We're not even gonna try to, like, I didn't have the tools to stay calm and regulated and set boundaries in that moment. And it was so funny because it was the exact opposite of what he was wanting for me. Like he was wanting me to fight with him, probably to engage with him, to get something out of me. And my body was literally like, nope, there was nothing in my head. It was the weirdest thing. And so I would say that if that is something you experience, for example, or another reaction in a fight or in an argument or a disagreement, if you're automatically disassociating and checking out, that is something I would work through outside of those instances so that when you are in that instance, you're regulated enough to then pause and stay in your body. And so, what that can look like is working with a somatic practitioner if you are able to do that. If not, if you're wanting to work on it on your own, I would say practicing breath work on your own, setting the intention. Shadow work is great. So I did a lot of shadow work at that time, actually, in this relationship, and it really helped. So when I was in a big feeling, or if I wanted to kind of like explore that feeling, maybe I wasn't in it in the moment, I would start by journaling, or I would just start by moving my body. Like I would put on a playlist, no expectations. I'm just seeing what comes up and moving my body. And then, like, by the end, or you can start with breath work, you can start with a meditation. It's really up to you. But by the end, you want to be embodying this shadow part of you. How would you like to react in that moment? Is it rage? Is it crying? What would you say to that person if you could? Just allowing yourself, activating that part of you and getting that out. And then when you process and you've released whatever was underneath that your body was kind of like protecting, like, oh, we're not going to go there. Then when you are in the situation again, now that you've processed it, you've released it, you've regulated, you can stay with your body. You're not afraid of having that reaction anymore. You can stay with that person, stay present. I don't like when you talk to me that way. Let's take a pause. Let's go for a walk, or I'm going to go for a walk without you. You go for a walk. You can de escalate essentially. So that's my long answer to that. What would you do in that situation, or what was a trauma response you had in relationships, and how did you work through it?
Yeah, I definitely also did the fawning. I had another question. I guess maybe you kind of answered this because you said you possibly would have been able to de-escalate the situation if you had put those somatic practices into play. And so you might have been able to shift the energy and been clear about your boundary, like you can't talk to me like this. How do you think he would have responded? Like, is that enough? Doing the somatic work on yourself? How would doing that have changed the dynamic or changed your experience of it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what came to me when you were asking that is, I don't know if he would have reacted differently, but then there would have been no avoiding who he actually is. And I think that would have helped me to leave sooner, because it was like, okay, I'm taking a really healthy approach right now, and I can't beat myself up over, oh, I didn't even say anything. I just sat there. Like, maybe if I had done this, it would have been different. Like, no, I am the regulated one. I am taking the healthy approach, and he's still having some tantrum and insulting me, or like whatever it is. I'm not saying those things actually happened in my situation, but whatever the person is, or maybe even being physically violent, whatever that is, there's no question anymore. This is not right. This is not okay. And then you can start to work through what that means for you and the next steps, where before it's kind of like, there's this avoidance, there's this hiding from the truth. There's always this excuse of like, well, maybe I'm actually the one who needs to work on myself. Or maybe if I did this differently, it wouldn't have happened. That was my story a lot in my last relationship, where I was like, maybe if I just do one more trauma healing program, he'll love me. Or maybe I'll be perfect after like one more therapy session hobbling at the moon with like crystals on my body. Like maybe then I'll be perfect. And you do that enough, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that that relationship pushed me into that, because that's like literally my life now, but like helping people to not do the same things. But yeah, there was a point where it was just like, of course it takes two people to tango, but it got to a point where I was like, he just doesn't like me. He just doesn't like me as I am. It's more about what I'm doing for him, what he's getting out of this, versus him actually loving me as a person.
That was a really good answer. Yeah. So even if doing the somatic practices does not change the other person or does not change how they're showing up in the dynamic, it's giving you enough information to feel confident and trust in yourself so that you can make a more informed and balanced and regulated decision about what to do next.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I definitely resonated with it must be me, right? Like I'm the problem. I have to do more breath work, more intention setting. And this was something very interesting about the abuser, the worm. as he is now. But he initially was so philosophical and so intuitive and in touch and like kind of sensitive and such a big champion for things like breath work and intention setting. And so I loved that. Right? I was like, wow, this person is the first person that I've been with that has met me on that level and really seen me on this like deep spiritual level. And he was always encouraging me to grow, always pushing me to be my best. And I love that. I am so about self development and self growth. And I always want to be working on myself. And he just wants me to be the best that I can be. But he used that value of mine to manipulate me. And there were a lot of times where there'd be some little argument bubbling up, and it would be something like, I mean, it doesn't even matter what it was. It'd be something really ridiculous, right? But somehow it was my fault, and somehow it would be my attitude and my tone and my all of the things. Oh, you're the problem. What's that tone I hear in your voice when I just ask a question? Or even asking questions was forbidden. It was like, did you just ask me a question? I was not allowed to question him. But yeah, literally. Oh God, I remember the first time he told me that. I was like, what? Huh? You can't be serious. And then I asked him if he wanted coffee in the morning, and he was like, didn't I tell you not to question me? I was like, ask if you want your coffee. I'm not questioning you.
Oh.
That's a question. You're taking my energy. You're doing it because you're anxious. This is your problem because you're anxious and you're ungrounded. And so he would ask me things like, did you breathe yet? Did you breathe today? And so he had me doing breath work at scheduled times throughout the day. Literally, I had alarms on my phone that went off like 10 times a day because I had to do his scheduled breath work. And it had to be the type of breath work that he instructed me on. He was like, only this kind of breath work because this is the right kind of breath work. And so you have to do it this way. And if there was ever a moment that he felt like I was giving him attitude, which was really just me existing, or anytime he just felt threatened or insecure or had any sort of qualm or wanted to avoid something. Maybe he promised to do something and then he didn't do it. And then I was like, oh, hey, do you mind doing that thing that you said you did? And I would rack my brain for hours to get the wording perfect, right? But then it would be like, are you questioning me? Did you do your breathing? Suddenly it was my problem because I wasn't regulated enough. I hadn't done my self care that he had passed down to me. Yeah. And so it was a very weird thing because my values are being regulated and grounded and present and working on myself. But what I realized was he was not reminding me of those things for my benefit. He was not reminding me of those things so that I could be happy and grounded and peaceful and calm. He was reminding me of those things so I would shut the F up. He was reminding me of that because he didn't want to hear my voice and because he wanted total control and dominance, and I was stepping out of line. And so it wasn't, oh, I'm worried about you. Did you do your breath work? It wasn't coming from a place of love. It was coming from a place of, you better bite your tongue. And the fact that you have an opinion or are a human being means that you're not fitting in the box that I've given you, which means you're failing at your values of working on yourself. So it was very weird.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. That is just such a mind fuck. Something that came up when you were sharing that is it sounds like he wanted you to be the masculine, like this grounded, secure, calm, peaceful, stable presence. Not saying women can't be that too, but he was like flighty and like, you're putting too much on me. And also not saying that that's how women are either, but he was providing zero container for you, zero stability, zero grounding. And meanwhile, you asking him if he wants coffee was like too much for him to handle.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
woman who's PMSing or hormonal or something.
Yeah. And he would be like, some whoever the fuck, like what Mark Zuckerberg, he doesn't make any decisions in the morning. They just put on the same clothes because that way it's one decision they don't have to make because they have to use all of their prefrontal cortex thinking power from the first thing in the morning to work on their very complicated projects. And so he saw himself as the visionary in our relationship and he saw me as the worker bee.
What was he working on? What was he doing?
He was on Twitter all day. But oh, yeah, that's a good question. Believe me, I asked that many times. Once in a while, he would have an idea and he would be like, this is the thing we should work on. This is the direction we should go in. And I was in mindfuck land. I was gaslighted to the extreme that my reality was just inside out. You just cannot, you don't see the truth. And for a long time, I did fight it too. I did realize initially what was going on, but they're just so good at stabbing the knife in and pulling it out. And then they're also the band-aid though. And I mean, that's a whole nother episode. There's a lot to get into on that. But yeah, what you said about the masculine energy thing, I asked him that too, because he was so like, I'm traditional. And it's funny because when we met, he was very like, oh, I'm on the left and I'm very open, free thinker and oh, championing women. And so again, they're really good at mirroring your values until they've got their claws in you and it's too late to go anywhere and you're isolated and alone and invested. Then he started to be really like red pill thinking and really like extreme. And so he was all these traditional masculine values. The woman should be at home and the woman shouldn't have a job and all this stuff. Meanwhile, he wouldn't work. He wouldn't lift a finger to do anything. So I would ask him, why am I doing all the work again? Aren't I supposed to be like cooking and enjoying being a woman? And he'd be like, you don't understand how it works. You don't understand what that means. No. And it's because what's even deeper than that is just entitlement. There's these people that are just entitled. He was able to come up with some story in his mind to make sense of all of that. That his like one moment of vision was actually setting us up for the future. And so I could be the worker bee. And actually, that was really my place. Like he just had all these lies to convince himself that we were living in the traditional masculine and feminine energies or roles when it served him, right? And then when it didn't, he would make up something else. So it was just, yeah, very confusing, just a lot of lies, a lot of gaslighting. And you asked about the somatic tools. I mean, I was practicing things like breath work and I was trying to do my self-care, and it's tough when you're in those situations. You are not, it's literally like brainwashing. And so would somatic practices like this have helped me? They might have helped me not get into that situation. But I mean, I remember doing shadow work one time when we were very early on dating together. And I went and I was like, please give me some privacy. I'm going to be doing some dancing in the bedroom here. I'm doing my shadow work. I'm just going to be dancing weird, you know, I'm ecstatic dancing in here. And he would open the door up on me. And I was like, what are you doing? I told you I needed privacy. I told you I'm going to be dancing weird in here.
That is a no.
I think I told you about this and you were like, that's not okay. Yeah. And we were complaining about it at the time, but still I was like, oh, well, you know, I don't know. Found some way to excuse it. But yeah, look, that's there, a boundary. I should have told him from then, if you ever do that again, I'm going to leave. I had to have a consequence. If you ever do that again, this is the consequence. I will sleep in the other room for 3 days, you know, whatever it is. But instead, I was just like, oh, maybe he didn't mean it. I don't know. I guess I can excuse it. I guess it's fine. Let me talk about it with my friends and then like come up with a reason why it's okay, or let me just look past it. And so, yeah, maybe somatic practices would have helped me keep the boundaries firm, or maybe I just wasn't in a place that I realized what was going on at that time. It's a process.
Two things that stood out from your story that I think would be good for the listeners to just reflect on is the majority of the time you were in this relationship, you were very isolated, like you said. And so that is something to be aware of with both of us reflecting back in the moment. We were learning these things, but your friendships, your relationships outside of your relationship are very important. And if you start to feel like your partner is isolating you in any way or questioning, I don't know exactly what was happening in this regard in your relationship, Eimanne. I know some of it, but my own experience, if you feel like your partner is interfering with things that are important to you, questioning your relationships, trying to cut you off from people in your life, or just never seems to like any of your friends or family, weird things like that, they don't have to like everyone. You know, there's nuance, there's gray areas, but listen to that intuitive voice. You have every right to set a boundary. You have every right to say no. And I know for myself, I would be scared, and sometimes still, even though this isn't something I should be scared of in my current relationship, but there is still this little fear that I'm working through of, if I say no, if I stick to my guns on this, I'll be left. I'll be abandoned. They won't like me anymore. Maybe I am wrong and I'm being dramatic or I'm being whatever. And so that's why I do think that's another reason this work is really important, because you can get to, not that you can't show your emotions to your partner. I think arguments, disagreements are healthy. Like, I don't think we have to be regulated and perfect and calm all the time. We should feel safe and comfortable to show some of our darker sides to our partner as well. We don't want to be robots that just like, yes, that works for me. Thank you. Like, that's weird. I don't want that relationship. It sounds boring as fuck. But I do think that somatic practice, it's like, because when we are in a big feeling and we go to our partner with something, it's much easier to talk ourselves out of it later on and be like, well, I was really angry or I was really upset. But if we take a step back and we pause and we're like, okay, what exactly about this is bothering me? This is where journaling comes in. Like, why am I so triggered? Is this something from my past? Is it actually a him thing? And it's probably a little bit of both. And just getting really clear on our parts in it, their part in it, and the repairing it and moving forward. Not saying the same issues won't come up here and there, new levels, same devils as a test, but I do think the ability to talk something out, come to a conclusion, and move forward and not have the same argument every freaking week is paramount. It's very important because that's how resentment builds. When things are not resolved, that's when the resentment builds, and will just erode your relationship from the inside out.
Yeah. And really important on that note, because it's a little bit of a double edged sword with women who are probably our listeners, people who are high achievers, who have healthy traits and healthy relationships. They are so good at the inner reflection and at the, well, what piece of this is from my past? And what might this be showing me about myself? And what's the lesson here? Is that you can excuse away literal abuse because you are trying to take accountability, trying to be responsible, trying to show up and work on yourself and put the effort in. And so all of those things, which are good traits in a healthy relationship, you have to be so careful. And sometimes you are so trauma bonded that you don't know that it's not a healthy relationship. And so what you just said there about, if you're having the same argument every single week, like if you find yourself constantly going to the journal and talking about the relationship and what's showing up and why is this not working and how can I do better, I think you probably know underneath that it's not you. Even though you're trying to be responsible and take accountability and do the right things, deep in your heart, I think you maybe just don't want to admit that it's not you and it's not healthy. And I get it. I've been there. But yeah, pay attention to really what's going on. And if you're constantly trying to talk your way out of something or come up with excuses for your partner and make things okay, there might be something else you need to look at.
So, what would you say? I guess you kind of answered this already, but to just expand on it further for someone who is in that situation and they are wanting to see their part in it, they're wanting to work on their shit, which is beautiful, by the way. It's a beautiful trait. I guess I'm wanting a concrete tip, or if there is one, that someone could look at to be like, okay, I'm doing too much. Like, how do you know you're in a trauma bond? How do you know that you're making it about you and what you need to work on, and the other person is not taking responsibility and doing their part?
If you suspect that your relationship might be unhealthy, and even if you're being gaslighted constantly, there's probably a piece of you that's like, is this normal? And you're finding ways to excuse it. And you're like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's no problem. But there might be a piece of you that is like, why can't I get this right? Why am I failing all the time? Maybe you don't even realize that it's a relationship. Maybe you're like, man, why can't I just get this right? I'm trying to do the things that he says, you know, I'm trying to make myself better and fit better. And it's just not working. I would say educate yourself. That would be the first step. Go on TikTok, watch videos about trauma bonds, read articles about trauma bonds, follow my content. A lot of my earlier content is about narcissistic relationships, abusive relationships, trauma bonds, and what it's like to be in there, and especially what it's like to be in there as a high achiever. Read the book, Why Does He Do That? When people are like, oh, well, you know once he hits you. No, you don't always know once he hits you. Actually, it's a lot more complicated than that. When I was being physically abused, I was like, no, 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 it's fine. I had plenty of ways to excuse it. So talk to ChatGPT, talk to a real human, tell them the truth, talk to a stranger. You know, I didn't want to tell my friends because I couldn't admit it. But once you start talking about it and you just start sharing like the real facts, and you'll probably even be trying to share facts in like a rose colored light, but the truth will show through. So if you're like, man, why can't I just get this to work? I would say just start learning about it. And I know you're going to be like, I don't want to. I don't want to because then I have to face the truth. But you can start small. You can start small. Just do some reading because educating myself was the biggest piece of realizing what was happening and then finally understanding that something had to change and I had to get out of there.
Yeah, don't worry about protecting them because if they're truly not doing anything wrong, then you sharing about it with someone who you trust, someone who is level-headed, maybe even it's a therapist, an unbiased person, then they're going to side with them. They're going to be like, okay, well, I see their part in it. So you never have to protect anyone because if they're doing nothing wrong, there's nothing to protect. If you feel like you are protecting someone and leaving things out, something is wrong. You know deep down that something they're doing is not okay. And you know this other person is going to tell you. And I know that's uncomfortable, but why are you protecting someone who's harming you? And I know in the moment it's very, like Eimanne was saying with the physical abuse, I can imagine that the first time it happens, it's just so shocking and jarring that you're like, oh, he was just mad, or that was a freak thing. You make these excuses and you don't want to get hit more. So you're just like, oh, it's okay. I can imagine that's what I would do in that situation. Well, not now, but in the past, I would probably be like trying to rationalize it and like figure out just how to keep myself safe.
They're really good at conditioning you. So I love this example because it's what I felt like was the frog in a boiling pot of water, right? If you throw a frog into a boiling pot of water, it's going to jump out. No, thank you. But if you put a frog into a nice, comfortable pot of water and you slowly turn up the heat, it will just sit there until it dies because it doesn't realize that the heat is being turned up and that it's boiling alive. And so that's what they do. Yeah, the first time it happens, you're like, "Oh, well, it was my fault." And I know that's such a cliche, but you know, I was cornering them. They've had such a hard childhood. I just know not to do that again. So if I don't do that again, it won't happen. And this is why it's so important to catch it early because things do obviously escalate, right? My relationship started with emotional and mental abuse and gaslighting. It did not start physical. And if I'd had the strong boundaries back then, and of course the lesson was had to be learned this way, but if I had had the strong boundaries back then, like I thought I did, I would have left. I would have just been like, this is done. And okay, I was trauma bonded too, right? So I have to give myself a little grace. I was trauma bonded, and that's a real thing. That is like a chemical addiction in your brain. So it's tricky. It's a very tricky, nuanced thing. But once you're in that, once it escalates to physical, they know how much to do at a time to trick your brain. And they have little things like he told me I couldn't react when he hit me. And so that was literally training my body to accept it as normal. And so the first time it happened, obviously I was screaming and running away and crying and like yelling and like, get away from me. And he was like, you can't do that in the future. You have to just take it. And he's like, look, you're upsetting the animals. Like the way that you screamed upset the animals. So that's your fault. Look at what you did. The dog peed in the hallway because you were screaming, not because he was beating me, but because I was screaming. This episode took a turn.
This is taking a turn.
So we'll have to put a trigger warning, I guess, at the beginning.
Oh, it's just so awful. But
Sorry.
this happens. No, this is what happens to people, and this is what they need to know.
Yeah, and there's no wasted time, but this is how important it is to protect your boundaries. And maybe for a lot of people, it won't go that far, but actually, what I've realized is way more people than you think have dealt with situations like that. And so protect yourself, protect your energy, Because once you're in that trauma bond and once you're constantly trying to make excuses for them, it's really tough to get out. And it does get worse. So be careful. Catch it early.
Yes, be careful. Don't protect the abuser. Listen to yourself if something feels off. And thank you so much for sharing that, Iman. Like you said, this happens a lot more than we realize. And there are warning signs. And if even one person listening to this can see that warning sign and make a different choice, then that is a win. So thank you for sharing that. And like we've said many times, this can be about a range of abuse, but don't ever feel shame if you are in that type of situation because, like we've said, we're all on our own journey. We're learning at our own pace. There's so much to it. There's nuance, there's brainwashing. There's so many different pieces. It really can happen to anyone. I can't remember the other
Yeah.
thing you said that I wanted to touch on, but that's okay. I was wondering though, because I don't think I've asked you this yet, or I don't think we've touched on this yet, but what would you have done differently in your 20s, or what advice would you give to someone in their late teens to early 20s in terms of dating, relationships, priorities?
Yeah. So, like you, I have played this conversation in my head. I can see myself having this conversation with like a future daughter, right? And what I would say, because I remember myself at that age, and I wouldn't have wanted to hear the advice that I'm giving now. I would have been like, no way. I want to go and be with boys. I'm boy crazy. It's so much fun. I like dating. I like the attention. I'm enjoying this. It's so easy breezy and beautiful boys. But having learned from it, I'm like, no, girl, don't do that. But would my past self listen to me? And so I constantly am trying to phrase how I could present it to her to realize that it's actually empowering to not center men. It's decenter men. That's such a trend right now, but it's true. And now that I have decentered men, I'm like, what's the big deal with men? I don't get it anymore.
Right.
And I remember when I was still, oh, well, am I going to get a relationship? I don't know. I just don't understand this decenter men thing. They all seem like lonely old women or like bitter young women, and they don't know what they're talking about. They're actually lonely on the inside. And now that I have decentered men, I'm like, oh no, it's great. I do not miss it at all. I'm so happy, joyful, full of life, peace, not missing it. But okay, back to the point. Yeah, I would tell her to not date. And it's about replacing the dates with your own fulfillment and what makes you happy and work on a business, grow something for yourself, and just make your life so full without having to rely on another person. And I don't know if maybe that starts super young with not having her watch Disney movies. Don't flood small children with images and stories and movies that's just about a woman whose life revolves around a man. If I wasn't flooded with that imagery, would I have not been so obsessed with wanting that as well? Or is it really our hormones? Is there just nothing you can do when you're a teenager? You're like, wow, love is the best thing in the world, and love is the best thing in the world. But love doesn't have to mean romantic partnership, you know? And we learn a lot through it, and it's different time now. And I don't know if she would listen to me, but I would be like, please just focus on yourself. And I would tell her there's plenty of time to date once you know yourself, once you know what you want, and once you can make a list of these are my values. This is what I'm looking for in a partner. And some people are like, you can't find that out until you've dated. No, I think you can find that out on your own, what you want. And you can find that out through looking at other examples. And then you can be clear. And then that's how you create those boundaries. And then that's how you say bye bye to anybody that doesn't fit in it without wasting. Again, it's not wasting, but without spending all of that time learning a lesson and instead spending that time aligned with something that you really want. It's just a thought, it's a hope, a wish. Don't know how possible it is, but that would be my hope. That would be my advice. Focus on you, choose you early.
Yes, I think that's beautiful. And I absolutely agree. And when you were sharing, I thought of something that I would hear from adults as a child. Men are assholes. They're all the same. Don't even think about it. And that actually made me even more boy crazy, I think. Or it made me, Yeah, it made me rebel, and it also made me not have standards because I was like, oh, they all suck. And so I would accept things that were unacceptable because I was like, different face, but they're all the same deep down.
Right.
You just pick one. There's literally that movie, The 5-Year Engagement. Is Emily Blunt the lead in that? I can't remember, but it's not her, it's someone else. She has this box of cookies and she's like, this box of cookies is like men. You just pick one, you take a bite. It doesn't matter. And that stood out to me. I was like, oh my God. And I want to tell you that's not true. Okay, guys, there are good men out there. There are probably more than you realize. And men know right away. This is a very good point I want women to hear. When a man, I don't care how old he is, I don't care how young he is, I don't care what his past is, I don't care about any of that. It is biological, it is instinctual. When a man wants to marry you, wants to be with you, not trying to manipulate you, not trying to suck your energy, not trying to waste your time, when he wants to build a life with you, there will be no question. Listen to me, there will be no question. There will be no games or does he like me? I don't know. Like that will literally not happen. So I'll just say, it doesn't mean that that person has to be your husband. Even if they would like to be, maybe they're not your cup of tea. That's okay. You still get to choose, still get to trust yourself. Do not enter a commitment with someone unless that is your standard. For women, that is your standard. And sure, are there charlatans out there? Again, we're learning, we're listening to ourselves, we're trusting. But I think that if you have that as the standard and you hold yourself, you conduct yourself as someone who is also at that standard, then doesn't mean you're going to have a perfect experience, but you're going to have a healthier experience.
Yeah, that is great advice. There are good men out there. They do exist. And you should have high enough standards to believe you can find one. And the stories we are told as children about dating and relationships do turn out to be our subconscious thoughts around that. My parents, my dad was always saying, men only want one thing from you. I don't think my dad said this directly, but that's what my mom always said my dad was saying. Men only want one thing from you. Like you can't have friends who are boys because men only want one thing from you. And so I grew up and then I had a lot of guy friends and I think with my guy friends, it was fine. But I always had this subconscious belief then that that's the only thing guys want from you. They don't care about who you are as a person. They don't care about the value you bring or your personality. It's just about that. And then so I thought if I was going to be valued, then I had to dress sexy and look like this and be like that and like flirt. And, well, they only want this one thing. So I've got to operate on that level. And so you just have to be careful. For everybody, it's going to be a different story, right? For you, it was men are all assholes. So why bother? Like they're all going to be the same. So just noticing maybe early on what the story is that's playing in your head and where that could be showing up for you will also make your journey a little bit smoother.
Yeah. Yeah. And there will be those moments, there will be those temptations, like the really sexy, hot, emotionally unavailable guy. And if you go for it, that's fine. But if you decide not to, it might be uncomfortable, but trust me, you're going to feel better in the long run that you listen to that intuitive voice. It's like, this guy kind of seems flaky, or this guy is also staring at that other woman while talking to me, or whatever the weird thing is that's going on. And I think that, at least for millennials, and we did talk about this a little bit earlier, but there was this message of like 20s being for partying and having fun and not really caring and whatever. And yes, like Eimanne said, you do have time, but you don't have as much time as you think. And your 20s go really fast, like this. Every year, every day, every moment goes like this. So don't get stuck in Never Never Land.
So, okay, if you could maybe wrap it up with like one final piece of advice. If you could tell your younger self or your future daughter or one of our listeners who is just a few steps behind on that journey, what's the one piece of relationship advice you would pass along?
Take the time. Don't sleep with someone right away. I know it's controversial. I know we get in the moment and we have fun, and again, no regrets, but I think that if you are in the mindset of wanting to find a serious relationship and partner, or even just a meaningful relationship. And this isn't because all they care about is sex and you have to like hold that as the end all be all and like the only thing that's of value. No, it's just for your own protection, for your own safety, to keep your energy clear and not infiltrated by, I think we've talked about this in other
They're
podcasts,
demons.
by demons, by dark energies. Yeah, this is what I want people to take away. Don't be in a rush to have sex with people. Have your boundaries, have your self respect, protect your energy, protect yourself. Sex is a very sacred act, like someone's putting themselves inside of you. We don't talk about this in a serious way. This is a very serious thing. You're not shaking hands with someone, guys. I would say take your body, your temple, your energy very seriously and only share it with people that you feel a deep connection with, that you want to have a meaningful relationship with. That would be my advice.
The thing about sex is that as soon as you have sex with someone, you release all of these bonding chemicals so that you feel attached to them. And it makes it so much harder to acknowledge the red flags. Then all of a sudden you're making the excuses. Because if I was going to give one final piece of advice that maybe we didn't touch on, is that you actually do know. Your intuition knows. And so many of the times when I've heard from women who have come out of an abusive relationship, they knew. They saw the red flags. And it's tough because you're like, how can I trust myself again? But when you go underneath that layer, you realize that you knew all along. You saw it. But especially if you're having sex, and actually this is a surprising fact for a lot of people, but abusers are really good in bed. They're really good at sex. It's like, wait, really? Yeah, really. But it's not about you and it's not about the connection. They're performing for a lot of them. It's different for everybody, but that is a common theme, is that abusers make it their mission to be good in bed because it's another control tactic and it's about their ego. It's just, I mean, there's a lot more to get into that. But then you're like, we have such a good physical connection. And then you're ignoring the reality. And that just contributes to the trauma bond. It contributes to the gaslighting. It makes it easier for you to excuse their behavior because you are chemically attached to them. So yes, I would agree with you 100% on that one. All right. Well, thank you for sharing all of your tips, Victoria.
Love you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Our key advice: focus on your own life, build something that fulfills you. Don't center men or think that another person is the key to your fulfillment, and never confuse intensity with compatibility. The right relationship does not require you to shrink, perform, or constantly have to prove your worth. Quite the opposite. If you are looking for support on anything we shared, Eimanne and I are both certified coaches and we are taking one-on-one clients. Visit the show notes to learn more. See you next week.